What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be going over several quick tips that should help you win more and play better in Fortnite's new South Park update. As always, if you guys do enjoy this video, find it helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more, comment down below what you think of South Park in Fortnite, and if you guys would like to use my code in the shop when getting anything, it's EvolveJake, just like my channel name is, and it will be underneath the webcam at all times. So the Stick of Truth is one of the major gameplay elements in this update, and it spawns as a rift anomaly that will just randomly appear throughout the course of the game. It is currently not 100% spawn rate. Maybe that changes down the line, but it's just a random chance that maybe this will or won't happen during the match that you're in. And when it does spawn, it will be marked for everybody in the match, and I think you need to make it a goal of getting there as soon as possible. When somebody activates the stick, there will be a blue icon on the map, and that is where the zone will close. And then the zone starts moving much faster and hitting harder from that point on. And the person who picks it up can take it and then activate it anywhere. But typically they will be somewhat close to where it spawns in. And that's why I think you want to try to get to that area once it spawns in as fast as you can. Because if you have, like, let's say you're at Riptides and you have to make it all the way to like Clawsy Lodge for some reason. Like, that's just like how things worked out. That is absurd, and that's going to be a large amount of distance to cross. You're probably not going to be the first one to get the stick, but at least you can get close enough to them before the zone starts really being a problem. If you don't really go to the area at all, you run the chance of just being so far away that it's really difficult for you to play the game from that point on. You're just running from a 5-tick storm, and you don't have time to really stop, reposition, do anything. You just have to keep going. So I think you want to get somewhat close to where it spawns. If you can get the stick, that's great, because now you can kind of control how the game is going to play out. But at the very least, even if you don't get it, being somewhat near where it spawns is probably going to give you the easiest chance to like get to where you need to get to, rather than needing to make it really far across the map. If you're the one activating the stick, it would be best to bring it to somewhere that's more defensible, like a mountaintop. I've seen some people get it and then they just use it right where they picked it up, and oftentimes that's not going to be an area that's like very defendable for you. So if you bring it to like a large mountaintop, a building, something that you can actually defend, I feel like that's going to make it easier for you to play the match out from that point, and it also makes it harder and more inconvenient for your enemies as well. Also, something that's already on the edge of the zone will be easier for you to defend, since you won't have to worry about that angle as much. If you activate it in a more centered area, you have to worry about enemies coming from like 360 degrees around you, right? But if you go to like the edge of storm and activate it, your backside is already going to be basically out of bounds. Obviously, people can make storm plays, but you know what I'm saying. You don't have to expect people coming from that way as much. So a mountain that's on the edge of zone will probably be the most defendable location for you when you do get the Stick of Truth. The Kenny respawn token is also something that was added in this update. And if you find this, you get to come back to life once you're eliminated. And this can be really powerful or not so good depending on how you play it. One thing I've seen a lot of people do when I was making spectating videos is that they would knock the player who has the Kenny coin, and there's like an animation for it happening, and they would keep shooting the enemy thinking they need to like thirst them or something like that. But that's not how it goes. Once you eliminate the enemy, they get knocked into the animation. And from that point on, they're not damageable until after they rift. So it's pretty obvious when somebody's using this. There's an animation and a lot of noise that comes with it. So once that happens and all the loot falls out of the enemy, once that happens, just collect your loot and go about your day. Focusing on shooting the enemy is not going to do anything for you. Also, the medallion, there's like several of them on the map. It's not like there's just one respawn coin in the game. Several people can have them. I know you can get them from rare chests. You can get them from the heal supply drops that drop throughout the course of the game. And you can also get them from the shooting game at Cartman Land. I'm not sure if there's any other ways you can get it, or if you can actually get it from rare chests, but or regular chests. But the only time I've gotten it from a chest, it was a rare chest. If you do respawn with this coin, I think a lot of people have the first instinct of trying to go right back to the enemy who eliminated them for revenge. There's times where that can work out, but I think a lot of times you're going to want to try to find somewhere to get a lot of loot. Depending on how late in the game it is, that can be a struggle. Like, everything might have already been picked through. Going to the vending machines can be a pretty good idea, because you can basically get a full loadout from vending machines. and your gold doesn't reset when you have the kidney medallion. So you'll spawn back with the amount of gold that you had when you were eliminated. So you very likely can just go buy a bunch of like shield and weapons for yourself and then play the game out from there. Also, if you ever eliminated someone like nearby where you respawn, you could maybe go for that loot. So trying to keep track of those things mentally could be helpful for you. But I think a lot of people are probably going to end up going to the vending machines. With the South Park update, Fortnite vaulted the Forsaken Valblade and Shockwave grenades, and this makes the game a lot slower paced. There's less fighting mobility in the loot pool now, and so a lot of fights are more like mid-range AR heavy, and it's a lot of like posting up, spraying out enemy cover, and getting eliminations that way rather than like getting tags and then pushing somebody. You still can push people because crash pads are in the game, but the overall pacing of the game is significantly slower. And this makes cars and cover items infinitely more valuable because these are going to be some of the few things that you can use to address bad timing. Like typically mobility items like shockwaves and the Valblade, not only were they good for pushing enemies, but they were good at addressing unfortunate timing. And if you're someone who's active on the map in a battle royale, there's times where you are going to get caught with unfortunate timing. Someone just hiding in a bush, someone's hiding somewhere you didn't expect. You're trying to go from point A to point B and there's like several people hiding in the way. One of them is probably going to shoot at you and you're going to have a fight that what you weren't ready for. So having a car will allow you to travel around the map quicker and not just get fried by the Deadeye AR because an enemy saw you. And then same with cover items. This can be something where you might get caught in a bad situation, but you can throw a bunker out and then now you're good to go. If you are just walking around the map, I think it's best to just walk around with your cover item out, whether that's porta bunkers or shield bubbles. If you already have it equipped, you can just immediately throw it the moment you start getting shot, then hopefully take less damage and then maybe turn the fight. Crash pads are kind of the main reactive fighting mobility item in the game right now. Unfortunately, the spawn rate of them is terrible. I am not a fan of the shockwaves and the blade being removed, but I would be way more accepting of it if the crash pads had a decent spawn rate. If you could just consistently get crash pads, like sure, it's a worse mobility item than shockwaves, but at least it's something to reposition and push enemies if needed. But the spawn rate of crash pads is quite bad. Using these, I think, is actually significantly easier than shockwaves. You can actually just double jump to activate a crash pad and you'll kind of go in the direction you were walking when you did that. But typically throwing them down and then like sprinting into it or sprinting and sliding into it will make you go much further, which is important if you do need more distance off your crash pad. If you're just always doing the double jump activation, you're probably going to end up using more crash pads than you would want to. And that is a problem because, like I said, the spawn rate of them is not that good. If you are trying to use these to escape a situation, it's very common for players to kind of turn around in air, shoot the pad behind them. That way enemies can't use it, and then like traveling that way. So if you think you're getting chased, you might want to try to do a 180 in air, shoot your pad, and then kind of turn back and look the direction that you wanted to go. Since the spawn rate of these is bad, it's a struggle, but one place that you can somewhat consistently get them is going to be the little loot pockets that are on the side of balloons. This was the same case with shockwaves. These had like a really good spawn chance of giving shocks for whatever reason, and it feels the same way with crash pads. I don't know if it's like that. I don't know if it's as extreme as it was for shocks, but pretty much every time I've opened these pockets, I've been able to get at least one spawn of crash pads from the balloons. So that might be something you want to keep in mind if you are landing near an area that has one of these balloon kind of stops. You might want to go and check that somewhat consistently as you leave your POI to try to get this mobility item more. Unfortunately, the supply NPC does not seem to give crash pads or shield bubbles, but they can give porta bunkers. So supply NPC is still pretty good because, as I said, the game is much slower paced, and that makes cover items really important, not only for kind of addressing bad timing or unfortunate timing, like I said before, but also the fact that like the end games are much slower. A lot more people are using bunkers in the end game. So if you don't have them, it's going to be harder for you to play. Everything about the game, I think, is just slower, and that makes cover items more ideal. And then it also makes rotating early in the end game even more important. With the shockwaves and the blade, you didn't need to rotate early. You could pretty much just always late rotate and then, you know, get into zone no problem. But now with the game being slower and crash pads and wingsuit being the only mobility items, they're a lot more tame and they're a lot more like susceptible to getting fried when using them. I don't know how to describe it, but if you're in zone trying to hold somebody and they're using shockwave or they're using the wingsuit it's much easier for you to stop them from getting into zone or do a lot of damage to them before they get into zone than it was if they have shockwaves. If they have shockwaves, they just shock into zone and they're good. So rotating early and then trying to hold the lobby, I think, is something that will work better for you in the end game now than it did before, just because it's harder for enemies to get into zone. So I am trying to make more of a habit of rotating early. You'll notice a lot of people just try to late rotate with the wingsuit, and they aren't really able to play the game. But that is going to be it for this video. As always, if you guys did find this to be helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.